Oh, really?
So, when you guys were reading chapter 12 and 13, let's just first get an understanding of what's taking place, kind of what you got out of reading it, and that'll kind of set the tone, and then you can go ahead and start asking your questions. So, what's going on?
I don't know, for me, like, I read it and there's a lot of, it seems like God still seems kind of fed up.
Ticked, right? Did you guys pick that up?
Yeah.
Who didn't read and you're like, oh God, please don't call on me? Okay. Yeah, God is definitely still ticked off. I mean, the way he's describing his wrath is like, uh-oh. Okay?
I think it's interesting how instead of using, Jacob is Israel, but like he uses Jacob's life, and that's how he's kind of describing Israel. Like the fact, I don't understand that Jacob grabbed his brother's heel in the womb. I don't get that part.
I think what I took from that is, like verse 3 says, even in the womb, Jacob struggled with his brother, and that was the NLT version. He even fought with God then. And so I was trying to apply that, like if you were going to use that for a sermon, or you're going to try to just apply that to your life personally. Some of us fight with God even before we even know we're called to do something. We wrestle with God, or we wrestle with the idea of whatever God has for us. So verse 3, even in the womb Jacob was struggling. When he became a man, he even fought with God. He wrestled the angel and he won. And I was like, well, how could he win? You know, but I think Pastor hit it on the nail a couple times, this term, that there's a threshold the Lord's going to reach with us where he's like, you win. I'm not going to fight anymore. You win. Do what you want to do. Be who you want to be. But there's consequences. There's my wrath.
And consequently, we miss out on God's best for us. We think we have the answer. We know what we want. And we're missing out on the best.
I think even in that even today, some of us, I think it's because of a lack of trust with God that we struggle with God's direction. It's like, are you sure, Lord? And I think that's our struggle in our relationships. Sometimes we want some certain relationships that we know are not good for us, but we want to, in our hearts, make it work. Almost like saying, God, I think I know better. And I've seen a lot of people, a lot of couples get into trouble when it comes to that, because I've heard ladies tell me, well, I'm going to win him to the Lord, or I'm going to win her to the Lord. You know what I'm saying? And or things are going to change. And sometimes what it really comes down to is like saying, God, I think I know better on this. Because that's how I see it, our struggle with God is. That God says, hey, go ask forgiveness. Or extend forgiveness. Have we ever been offended and someone says, man, I'm sorry, and you're like, no, I'm not ready to forgive. Who are we really struggling with there? We're struggling with God says, forgive one another. And I think even bringing down to basic, how many of us ever said, man, I need to go study, but okay, let's go to Dairy Queen. You know what I'm saying? So we struggle really against God and ourselves with that,
I think too, you may not verbally say, well, God, I'm going to do it my way because my way's better. But our actions, like Pastor said, our actions show exactly what we probably should say, so, and then we try to internalize by justifying, saying, oh, well, I didn't say it, but our actions will do something else. I remember before I got married in a relationship, I tried so hard to make it work, even though I seen many red flags, some danger signs. But in my own heart, in my own spirit, I'm trying to say, no, well, this is God's will, this is God's will. And so I was becoming numb to the red flags and the danger signs, and I was avoiding them. But as soon as I would get into God's word and and begin to seek the face of God for who He is, not for what He can give me, that's when the conviction started to settle in. It's like, you need to sever this right here. So when you try to do it on your own, it's because, first of all, you might not be in God's word, and second of all, your heart, your motives might not be in the right place either, and saying, well, I know I should be doing my homework, but I'm going to do this, or saying, oh, well, I don't have time to do anything, but, you'll make time for what's most important. Yeah.
There's always a price to pay also. When you wait, you put what you know you need to do and you should do, you put that aside and say, I'll catch up on the next go. I'll make up for it, and do all-nighters or whatever, and get up and jump in the shower and do, head for school. But there's always a price to pay, and you have to look at the cost that's involved as well.
So what are some questions that you guys prepared for today? Who wants to go first?
Well, when I was reading chapter 13, verses 4 through 6, it says, "But I am the Lord your God from the land of Egypt. You know no God but me, and besides me there is no Savior. It was I who knew you in the wilderness, in the land of drought. But when they had grazed, they became full. They were filled, and their heart was lifted, therefore they forgot me." And my question to you is, in God's provision and God's love, God had brought the Israelites out of Egypt and He provided for them. Why do you think it was so, to them, God's love and provision wasn't enough? After all that He had brought them through, why do you think that is, that, they want to serve other idols? Like it says they have even served a piece of wood. Like why do you think that is appealing to their eyes? And how can that be seen in our own lives today?
Well, wait till you get to Ezekiel, where God says, you chop down a tree, with half of it you warmed yourself and cooked, and with the other half you made an idol and worshipped it. That's how bad it gets. But I think probably for me, the satisfaction that everything's okay is probably, I always say, being satisfied is probably the most dangerous place for any Christian. Because when you're satisfied, you don't need to push forward anymore. It's like, okay, I made it. And I think that's what happens. God took care of them because He loved them and He blessed them. But eventually He said, you know what, God, we could do this on our own. We could take care of this. We don't need you anymore. I got a savings account. My car's running. I food in the refrigerator. And so we kind of tend to say, God, we're okay. Have you ever noticed when you really need God, how your prayers are different than when everything's good? It's because we don't find that consistency in our lives, that no matter what our situation, this is the day the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. Whether it's a good day, whether it's a bad day, whether I'm in jail, whether I'm at the hospital, whether I'm at, the buffet line, we don't have that. Because I've always said this, and I remember when the Broncos won the first Super Bowl, I always remember that they asked Mike Shanahan, when do you start preparing for next year? And he said, we'll enjoy this for 24 hours, and then we'll get ready to defend our championship next year. In other words, and if you notice, in most of our churches, we do a big event, and then we're like, oh, awesome, man, let's relax for a while. That is the worst thing any church can do. That's when you really press on after a big event or a big service or anything like that. And if you look at it in your life, after a great service is usually when the devil's right around the corner to discourage you. So don't ever get satisfied.
What's the difference between satisfaction and content, being content?
Well, content, sister, is no matter what the situation is, I have joy in my heart. Not happiness, because There's some things God has taken me through that I'm not happy with. But, you know, but the joy of the Lord is constant. You know, for everybody to say, well, you got to be happy all the time. I don't necessarily need to be happy. I just need to know that wherever station in life God has me, I'm going to be content. Satisfied is when I feel like I got enough. You know what I'm saying? I don't need God anymore. I can do this on my own.
Well, one version on that verse you're saying is verse 6, right?
Yeah.
We did 4 through 6? Okay, sorry, it jumped on me. But I think it has a lot to do with Pastor saying, it says, when I fed you, you were full. And then it says, you became arrogant. That is why you forgot me. So I think it's just a matter of forgetting the blessings that God gives us. Sometimes we do that. We just, everything's going good, and then again we call out to God when everything's going bad, but we completely forget when we are in a good state with God, or ourselves, feeling like we are, but we can't stop feeling that we are, because there's such a newness to God every day, and to be able to get to know who He is. So that's the most important thing, is that you don't let your pride get to you and say, oh, I've arrived with God.
Sister Mark.
No, she's not.
No, you know when she'll be here.
Probably not till Sunday. She'll be here Sunday morning, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
Thank you.
So that's how it's important that we just don't let become prideful and feel like we've arrived with God, because we haven't. We're still attaining and striving for more of Him in our lives.
Remember when the Israelites were in Egypt, they were slaves, so they needed God. When God brought them to the promised land, they felt they didn't need God anymore. And the thing is never to get to the point that we don't need God anymore.
I have a question, and this is more moving away from the practical side and more into the historical side, where it says, where it talks about Samaria in chapter 13, verse 16, where it says, Samaria shall bear her guilt because she has rebelled against her God. They shall fall by the sword, their little ones shall be dashed in pieces, and their pregnant women ripped open. Was that fulfilled during that time, or is that something that's yet to come? Because I've read a lot of, like that when I was looking up, I saw that it's part of like...
Well, if you look at it chronologically, if you look at like when the Assyrians came and the Babylonians came, they slaughtered everyone. It wasn't just, in Samaria, the Assyrians came first and took the northern kingdom that we call the northern kingdom of Israel. And then when the Babylonians came, they took over everything, and even Judea in the southern part of the kingdom, the southern kingdom. So there were seasons that happened. It's not like, okay, one chapter and it all happened. It's like years. It took years for those events to take place. And so that was the custom in those days. Remember, in those days, it wasn't like we're going to drop a bomb on you. It was hand to hand, man to man, sword to sword. And when they rebelled, they were there to kill everyone and take over the territory. So, yeah, there was a time when that happened.
Sorry, I don't know. I just wonder, like, the tone that I get when I read those two chapters is that God's been waiting a long time to tell the Israelis to tell the Israelis that He's fed up. So my question is this has been going on for generations. Why did God choose that generation to say, okay, I'm done with you guys?
I think God gives everybody a chance, because if you look at Jonah, which is probably one of the next ones, God says to Jonah, tell him 40 days. They got 40 days. And they're going to kill them all. They're going to destroy them all. Children, cows, everybody. And yet the Bible says that they repented and God relented. I think when God comes and said, look, that's it, I'm done. Forget it. Because I read through the 14th chapter already. God always says, I'm going to bring you back. But He says, look, because each generation doesn't get better. I think of in the 60s when I was born, it was a sexual revolution. And now we're reaping what we created in the 60s. In the 70s, 72, Roe v. versus Wade was, and now we got more than 50 million children that were slaughtered. And you think about it, what has that created for young people? Young people are not afraid anymore to shoot anyone. If you ask Sister, I remember in the 80s, I think, late 80s when Carmen was big, remember he had a song that said, in the 50s, you know what the problem in high school was? Chewing gum.
Not me, the singer Carmen.
singer.
Yeah.
They're like, what?
There used to be a singer named Carmen. They said, you know, he has a song that says in the 50s, chewing gum,
Talking in class.
talking in class was the major issues of that era. In the 80s, it was, you know, murder. It was kids bringing knives to school and guns and drugs. Think about what it is now. I mean, now you have a lot of children with a lot of difficulties in their lives. And you know what? One of the things, and I was reading this, there's 20 million children in the U.S. that don't have a parent in the house. So there's no, how would you say, there's no parental supervision. Most of them are, and even if you do, think about life today. Think about, what's the first thing you do after you eat? When you go out?
You have to pay, for one thing.
Well, yeah, you know. But if you look at most people, next time you go out to eat, if there's a family, look at them. Just, I watch people. If they got kids, most of them would either be on an iPad or will be on an iPhone. So there's really no interaction with one another. You know, I mean, when I grew up, man, I was 15 when we got our first TV. You know. Now any kid who doesn't have an iPhone or at least a Samsung phone, you know, I mean, feels they're being deprived. And the problem with this generation is that we feel entitled to those things. And if we don't have them, and that's the same thing with Israel. Israel feels entitled to the blessings of God, but they want to live the way they want to live.
Would you say then, I mean, if we're going to put it into modern day terms, would you say America was like how Israel is during this time?
Yeah, the number one biggest issue in America, it's not sex, it's not drugs, it's not alcohol, it's not violence. The number one thing that America did, that we forgot God. Once you forget God, it opens the door to everything else. Because once Israel forgot God, it opened. If you go to Ezekiel, and God tells Ezekiel, which they're kind of contemporaries, and Ezekiel actually goes off to Babylon. In Ezekiel, he says, you didn't even wait for your lovers. You went after your lovers. In other words, there was a time that Israel wasn't waiting for sin, they went looking for sin. And that's where we're at today, that today we find new ways to say, God, we don't want you in our lives anymore.
So, I know it's kind of easy to overdraw parallels, but would you say then, sir, that like our generation, and speaking to you guys who are the
Yes.
previous generation, so would you say that the millennial generation is like the worst?
All it is, Keisha, without God, we never go up. We always go down. And even yesterday, talking about Jonah, the Bible says, God says, go to Nineveh. And then the Bible says, and he went down to Joppa. Then he went down to the ship, the port. Then he went down to the ship. Then he went down to the bottom of the ship. It's never an upward movement. You know what I'm saying? Unless God, we turn to God and then he brings us up. So I don't think millennials, I can't say I blame millennials. I think millennials is just the cause of what our generation we have created now. If we say, well, it's the millennials' fault, we really got to look ourselves in the mirror and say, we created that. I was talking to someone and I was saying, because we grew up in want, we didn't have everything, we didn't want our kids to go through that, but now our kids don't know what it is to appreciate what they have. Because, you know what I'm saying, I mean, for Christmas, if we got one present, we were like, woo-hoo. You know, now for you guys, it's like, is that it? You know? And because we wanted to give you the best that we didn't have. We didn't want you to suffer like we suffered. You know what I'm saying? We didn't want you to go through what we went through. But we went overboard, and now we didn't show you what it's like to appreciate things.
So like, for us who are starting to grow up and eventually want to become parents, how would you tell us to handle when we start having our own children? Like, how would you, if you could go back and do it over with all of us, talking to you guys, like, how would you approach it differently than like looking at it now? And this goes for all of you.
Less presents for me.
Well,
They would have a fourth child.
You know what? I should have had a fourth child. I think that for you all, because of where you are with your walk with God, you have to start making those changes now. For your own generation, so that they can see you are different, you are separated. And you can't let that define who you are. Millennials, yes, that's your generation. I forget half the time who we are, but who are you? Are you a millennial first, or are you first a child of God? And that's what society has labeled you as, so you need to turn it around for yourselves and for your generation and show you are different. And then from there, you will know how to parent better. You will make those changes. You'll go, okay, I was spoiled, I got this, I got that. I can't do that with my future children. I've got to change the way I think. Because if you don't, then you're just going to create another group of kids that who knows what they're going to do. So that's...
You can't get away from technology. But I was listening, and they said one family, what they do, when, you know, all the kids have, like, just like Kayleen, just have to check, you know, who texted her, you know, in the middle of chapel, you know. But what they do is that they have a basket at home. And when it's dinner time, everybody puts their phone in the basket, you know. And so, and they deliberately, while they're sitting around the table, they're like, hey, TJ, how was your day? How was school today? You know, anything exciting? And they give that child an opportunity to share. And then they, Keisha, how was your day? You know, and Alyssa, you know, and Mom, how was your day? And so it forces them to interact with one another. And most of us don't know how to interact other than short, you know, LOL, you know, yeah. Yeah, you know. And it's going to get even worse for us because when you think about it, like the other day I was reading, they're talking about a new phone implant. So you don't have to actually have a phone, you just think, call Carmen, and it dials Carmen. And you have an implant, and you know, it's already inside of you. You know what I'm saying? Those are the things that your children are going to grow up. Like if I said, hey, how many of you have a VCR? You know.
I have one that's
Yes.
You must have an old TV, right?
Like, you know what a VCR is.
Like if somebody says, hey, an 8-track, you know what I'm saying? You know.
You were on if you had a rewinder,
Oh, yeah.
Or a record player.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
a VCR rewinder.
But if you think about it, I mean, even CDs. How many of you guys buy CDs anymore? Yeah. But everybody just downloads.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? I
Or
mean,
now that USB, you can buy a...
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's vintage now. Though. Like you guys are all saying vinyls are cool, but like back then they had to buy vinyls. Now we buy vinyls and we want to be retro and vintage and rustic or whatever.
Hey. Vintage is very old.
Hey, it's expensive
Go on,
now.
Carla, you have to be up
Yes,
there.
sir.
Sit up there.
So those are the things that are different, you know, us as parents that will see that. Systematically, it's gonna start a family, and those are the decisions that she'll have to make, you know. I mean, like, how many of you have your own bedroom at home? If you didn't have one, would you feel deprived?
No.
I told me and my brother, we made our bed every day and pick it up every morning because the living room couch was our bed. You know, and we hated it when people came over on Saturday mornings because like, and then we go, pick up your blanket, take them to the room, you know, like,
I think too, with that, you have to, and you all been asking a lot of questions about marriage and future and all that. You all have to just really be able to walk into wherever God's taking you, where you're at. Don't think you're going to get everything in one shot, because those are times that you're going to learn to really appreciate what God is doing all the more in your life. I mean, you know, rejoicing in the plenty and rejoicing in the less, and it's just, you know, I mean, I saw, what, 2 people raise their hand? The room? Who had room? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like Janelle and Kaylee and Enoch didn't have their own room, you know. So, but what I'm saying is that there's going to be those times that you're not going to have your own privacy, or you're not going to have your own, it's for me, just for me only. That's just figuring it out with the Lord and Him guiding you to know that God has me here for a reason, and He's teaching me. He's teaching me to trust in Him despite what I have and what I don't have. And those are very important steps that you need to take in your life.
and not to forget that everything comes from the Lord.
It depends on your walk in life, what goals you have set. Where are you going? Where do you feel a calling that God has placed in your life? And there are a lot of variables there. You'd probably be serving maybe in a foreign country, and the amenities that we have here are found perhaps just among the very wealthy. And so we take so much for granted. And know that, you know, God has placed a calling on your life, and God is going to make provisions. He has already the provisions there. But you just have to seek Him every step that you take. Where am I going, Lord? What do you want me to do? Even today, you know, Father, I need this. Geez, I don't have that. I'm feeling deprived, or I'm feeling hungry, or whatever, you know. And I think at that point, He'll begin to walk into the miraculous. And, you know, we hear about that. But how often do we see miracles per se, you know, on a day-to-day basis? You get into some circumstances where you need that. And so you need to be reaching out. And rather than going for a miracle, Lord, thank you for your favor. Thank you for the blessing. I am blessed, highly favored, Lord. Guide and direct me. I'm your instrument, you know. And it's not always going to be comfortable, or you're not always going to feel safe either. But you have to know, above all else, that He is with you, and He will walk you through whatever.
Any other questions?
So going back to the fact that you said that every generation gets worse, what would you say to us in order to, I don't know if it's preventable, but in order for like us as believers and as future ministers to stand up and not be like the generation previous and the generation before that?
Be part of the remnant. Always have a repentant heart. Always seek the face of God, not the blessings of God. And because God will always raise up a remnant, and you want to be part of it. you know, and
Maybe the question is, how do you become part of the remnant? I think you stand out by being a servant of all. That was Jesus' whole mission. Like, you can never outserve, and you'll always stand out when you take the high road. You'll always stand out when you're humble. You'll always stand out when you serve. And I think that's a huge issue with the generation, or just church in general. You know, people think like, I'm above that. And I mean, that was Thursday's chapel, the pride issue. And anytime you think someone else has pride, it's because you are struggling with pride. So it's amazing how we can throw that stone on someone else when chances are we're probably dealing with it in our own lives. I think that sense of entitlement, chuck it. I think that's how you would be a part of the remnant. Just serve. God will always favor a servant's heart.
I think for your summer reading, you should read a book entitled The Three Kings.
A few copies.
That'd be a cool chapel series for next
In
year.
my night class, we were talking about, I don't remember, but that was actually brought up, and a little, our professor shared a little bit of it, of, it's the three people, correct, the three different,
Yes, Saul, David, and Solomon.
and it seemed very interesting, so.
It's a really good book.
Sure.
Yeah, it's one
The
pages.
the last chapter will really rock everybody's world. Let me just say that.
Just a suggestion, read Practicing God's Kindness as well. I finally got the chance to, my dad blessed me with it, and I could say it's the reason why I'm able to keep going these last couple of weeks.
And the way that you make a difference in people, like with what you heard, you know, the servant, but you have to make God a priority in your life every day. Not God, I gotta fit you in my schedule. He's gotta be, you know, seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. I think the worst that we can do in ministry is be so busy in ministry that we don't have time to minister to God. And I've seen that in my life and other ministers that were like, God, I'm reading the Bible for a message, a teaching, and not because I wanted to speak to me. You know, or I'm doing something, well, God, I'm busy for you, you know, I gotta do this, gotta do that. That we don't take time just to sit at His feet. And Jesus said that's the best thing. Because God will give you time for everything else. Now, here's the thing about millennials and about the remnant. They always stand out, but they're not always appreciated. Okay? If you look at Elijah stood out, but Ahab said, here's the troubler of Israel. Because you're not complicit to what everybody else is doing, so you will be a reminder of where they should be, and society in general will not appreciate that. Like, I heard it in, I had a Roman and Greek philosophy class, and as a consensus, it was at a secular school, and I was in the class, as a consensus, the class said the problem with the world is Christian. And I was sitting there. And they said because they kill all the fun. And so I asked, what do you mean by that? It says, well, you guys don't let us do nothing. So what you're really saying is that we want to continue in our sin. And you bother us by not doing what we're doing.
I think in that same exact analogy, translate it to being a student, we want to continue doing what we're doing and still get behind a pulpit or still have a following or still be inspirational. It doesn't work. You have to chuck some things out to grow, and you can't get the same results. Like, you can't, if a non-Christian can live our same life, that's a problem. They shouldn't be able to live our lifestyle. So if someone who's training for ministry can live the same life as someone who's not, there's a gap. You can't expect those same results. You can't live for the world, still have your fun, but but then still call yourself a Christian. So in the same light, you can't be training for ministry and be pushing to be a good student if you're still willing to not develop some disciplines and good habits. It won't work.
Then you become a Pharisee and a Sadducee. You know the rules and the laws, but you don't live them outside of the public area.
You're just
And you have
wait for
heard
the
of
pulpit.
ministers, like I was listening to Pastor, he was actually here for Christmas. You remember Focus on the Family? He was a pastoral counselor. Focus on the Family that said, and I remember something, I don't know if you guys were still there when he said, I had a call from a pastor having an affair, but he'll be in the pulpit on Sunday.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what's wrong with a lot of our generation who are trained to be ministers. Like, having the opportunity to go to SAGU, I saw that a lot. That they said that they were Christians, but they only, like the Pharisees, they only knew the law, but they didn't live how Jesus lived the law. And I think that's what's hurting a lot of us today.
What isn't that the knock against the church from society? That we're church is full of hypocrites because we say one thing but who we are.
That's why you gotta choose to be different. Choose to take the high road. Choose to seek the face of God. Choose to be a servant. Because I'm sure you're probably tired of people saying, oh, well, the millennials. You know, I heard it when I was Generation X. I said, I'm not going to be labeled as Generation X. I'm going to be different. You know, I'm going to go after Christ, and you have to choose to want to have that. You know, you could stay labeled as the millennial generation, or you could choose to be the one who goes after Christ with everything that they have, who choose to serve, who choose to take the high road.
And with that choice, again, you're going to be alone a lot of times. Your friends, you know, that you love to be with, they might not choose the same road. And you have to make that defining moment in your life and say, you're with me or you're not, but I'm going to keep going with Christ. And, you know, so that's a really important step you have to consider in your life, because, again, friends are important, but they don't matter. It's your relationship with Christ. And if they just are not on board with you, it's not worth having them in your life, because they're just going to drain you. They're going to pull you down, and you're going to feel bad because, so you have to really make that choice, like Brother Albert said, and choose, you know.
It boils down to, again, the company that you keep. You think that you're going to be able to bring them to Christ? They don't want that. They don't want that, you know. And if not, then you pray for them. But if they're not walking with you, along with you, having the same values, the same goals, then what does light have to do with darkness? You know, they'll drag you down.
Well, that's it, but don't get the attitude, I'm holier
I'm
than
better
thou.
No, sure.
You know, because that can easily happen as well.
Mm-hmm.
But know this, because even in Elijah's time, he said, God, I'm the only one.
Yes.
And God reminded him, said, no, Elijah, I have 7,000 that haven't bowed their knee to Baal. Because sometimes it feels that way, like you're all alone, God, nobody cares. You know, nobody wants you like I do, but God will remind you that, no, there's people out there that, you know, have a heart for me still. So don't, even though you may be alone, but don't ever feel like you're alone. And even if it's just you and God, you're a majority.
I think 2 questions you can ask yourselves as students. 1, am I hireable? 2, do I have a following? Because if you're just pulpit hungry, title hungry, position hungry, it will not propel you forward, and you won't be able to sustain that in ministry. You won't last. You'll throw in the towel a couple years in. But you can. I think some of us are so desperate to have pastor in front of our name and we're just looking forward to that moment. And there's no following. There's no sheep following you. You have not worked on gaining connection, and that takes sacrifice of your time and your energy. I mean, you see pastor going to hospital visits or us going to meetings in the evening, and if you go into ministry with the mindset of, I'm only going to work till 4 o'clock, you know, my family is priority, or I'm just telling you, you got to know what you're getting yourselves into, because it won't work. You're gonna throw in the towel, or you're gonna find some reason to quit. But if you go in with the mindset of like, God, you call me to do this, there will be tough times. There will be challenging moments. There's going to be moments where I don't want to do this anymore. But you can't, like, you don't create the rules. They're already kind of there. Like, if someone's in need, that's what you signed up for.